I haven't seen much on the internet about doing a gar, so today I'm going to start on one and see how it goes. I'll make sure I show y'all how to do it. I'm doing this one because it's ugly and it'll work real good in my hunting camp. You guys will all be looking at it and those ugly looking teeth. But anyways, I'll do some videos step by step on what I'm doing. I'm going to take a paper towel and put over these teeth because it's already ripped holes in my gloves, just trying to stick that popsicle stick in there where it'll stay open from now on. Yeah, the end of my glove's gone. I'm just going to stick a paper towel over top of it. And try to stay away from the teeth. I'm going to go ahead and start cutting it down the side. And I'm going to remove all the meat. Well, I found a good place to start. I had to take this hacksaw, bend it over the edge of this cookie sheet, and hold it down real hard and just keep sawing until it went through. I knew if it went through metal, it'd probably go through this doggone gar. I think metal's easier, to tell you the truth. Those fins are going to be pretty when I get done, but I cut all the way up it and it was like cutting through rib bone all the whole time up. That stuff's so tough. Make sure you cut that little gall plate there at the very top, up underneath the gall where his galls come out. I just wanted to show you all this good looking meat in here. My fishing buddy eats gar, and I think after I mount this one, next one I catch, I think I'll try to eat some. They say the guts in the doggone thing are toxic, so be careful. I wear gloves anyway. Looks like I'm going to have to change them on this one. So, I got a big old pile of meat and guts, and I got the main part of it cleaned out. Well, I'm starting to get tired. I'm going to throw it in the freezer and get it back out tomorrow. Ugly old gar. Okay. This is day 2. Working on the gar. My friends tried to tell me it's going to be easy because the shell's real hard and I can scrape on it. That's not true at all. And here is why. What you're looking at right there is a full-size, good old hefty backbone. And I'm going to have to go back and cut all that out once I get all the meat out. I got to make sure I don't go through the hard hide when I cut that center bone out. And there's all the meat that's around that center bone that I scraped out on this part of it. But at least you'll know what to expect when you start working on this gar. And then I have to get all the meat out of the head right in there. Okay, I found out that if I take my knife and cut along here, and as usual, you know, you got to take your time, be careful. I know the skin's tough, but still got to be careful. I take my knife and cut along here, cut along the bottom here a little bit, and then take this grapefruit spoon. See, it's jagged on the end. Take this grapefruit spoon, and I can scrape out that meat like I've been doing here. And once you do that, get it on both sides, it looks like this backbone and spine area is going to be pretty loose and pretty easy to get out once I get all the meat cut loose from it. Well, you can see I finally got that backbone out of there. The nice part is when you take the backbone out of this garfish, it doesn't leave anything behind that you can't scrape out. I did a bass not too long ago, and you had to cut real careful with your shears to get the backbone out. But this was just gristle holding the backbone in, actually, at the skin of the fish. So you can see I got most of the meat out. I'm still going to go over it one more time really good and get any chunks I left. You see those two bumps right there? Those are the fins up underneath the garfish. I'm going to scrape them real good. Make sure I don't make any holes. With the gar, the skin's a little tougher, so you can usually do it. If you look real close right here, inside the head, I got the head cleaned out where I can actually stick my finger up in there. And the gills for the other side of the fish, the gills that are going to show, I was real careful not to mess with them. And they tell me anytime you do a fish, whatever you do, do not cut that skin right there. Don't cut that thing, because the head will most likely fall off. You don't want that to happen. You want to be able to button it all back up and stuff the fish however you want. So anyway, I want to show you that much I got done. We'll keep scraping on it. There's some gristle right there. You see that white gristle? Light's shining on it pretty good. Anyways, that gristle actually turns into part of the fish's skull. So I'm not going to cut that. I'm just going to make sure I get all the meat off of it. Well, this is day number 3. What I'm doing is working on it until I get tired, and wrap it up and stick it back in the freezer overnight. Get out in the morning, put it in some cold water and let it thaw out. Doesn't take very long once you got all the meat out of it. I think I've got all the meat out of it, even the head. It's got some red stuff in there, but that is all gristle. And not only that, but when I took out each eyeball and scraped around in there real good, I got this much meat out. I got that much meat out of each side, scraping around inside the skull, getting all the meat out that I could. Yeah, you can go ahead and do it fast because the gar's tough and all that stuff. But I was told if you're going to do it right, you got to take your time, work on it a few hours. When you get frustrated or tired, put it in the freezer and get it back out the next time. So I got all the meat out. Next thing I'm going to do is start the drying process. I'm going to put it in some borax and water and let it set for 3 or 4 hours. And I'm also going to put a little cap full of Lysol in there. That helps get rid of some of the fishy smell on the skin. And then I'll get back with you when I pull it out of the tub full of Lysol and borax. Like I say, just a cap full of Lysol, but put a couple cups of borax in there and it'll pickle everything and get the skin ready to start drying out. This is day 4. Last night I let my gar skin soak in a tub of water with water and a couple cups of borax. And I left my air conditioner on back here in this room so I could make sure I didn't get any fishy smell. But the borax has taken out fishy smell anyway. So it just helped things a little bit. I wanted to also tell you that a paint opener, you get those all the time whenever you buy a can of paint. If you have a paint opener laying around the house, it's a real good scraper for small areas. And little fish, where you can't get your finger in there or your other tools in there. Small fish, you can get in there and you can scrape out all the meat. And it's probably something you have laying around the house anyway. I used it to fill this hole full of borax and poke it way down in there. Poke that borax up in there, up in the skull. So in case I missed any meat, that'll help the odor and kill the fish smell. And then I flipped the fish over, and I did the same thing on the other side. So I also jammed borax up in here, and also down in the tail area to make sure I got it real good. And then I rubbed the borax in with my fingers, and you can actually see the skin moving and expanding. So after the borax all night and some water, I took it back out, and now I'm covering it with borax again and rubbing it into the skin real good, getting all the areas where I might have missed a little bit of meat. I do my best to get every bit of meat out of there. The more you get out of there, the better off you're going to be later on. This is day 5. I had my gar in the freezer. Got him back out. Let it start thawing out. Got it thawed out. Decided I wanted to get a little more meat out of the skull, so I did from back here. But trying to get every bit of it out that I can as I stuff it. And you can see I got a piece of PVC in there. That's a 1/2 inch C PVC. And then I used one of those swimming noodles to put in the gar. Had to trim it down a little bit because it gets fatter as it comes up to the main body. And then I actually had to add some of that stuff you get for insulation for on piping, for PVC piping. Well, anyways, this one was for like 1 inch, so it had a big hole in it, you know, down the center of it. And I took it apart and slid it in there. You can see the top part of it. So on the showing side, it'll be nice and firm against the skin. And I kept pulling this up so I could make sure that it was coming up far enough for me to sew it. Another thing you want to do is you want to keep wetting down your fish so you can keep working with it, because you still have to do the fins and the eyeball, and you want it to be flexible. You don't want it to dry out that way. I flattened the end of the CPVC pipe like somebody suggested on one of the forums I was looking at, because the tail is actually flat right there. So I flattened it out, and then I slid a piece of this in the tail down here. That way I could keep it firm on the side it's showing. Make sure I can sew it together. And by the way, sewing it together is not a real good idea, but it's the best way to hold it together, I think. So I flattened that out, and I slid a piece of this in there, and it looks pretty good from the show side. Of course, this is the side nobody's going to see. But keep wetting your fish down, and keep wetting those fins down, because you don't want them to get hard and stay in one place. You want to be able to spread them out like that and put a clip on it, paper clip on it, so they'll be sticking out and look real pretty when you get done with it. So you don't want them dry like that. You want to keep wetting them down. I use this spray bottle right here. I just keep wetting them down, so when I get to that spot, I'll be good to go. You want to stuff your fish first, and then you want to do the eyeball, because the fish is going to move around and you'll be bumping those fins. So you want to do the eyeball. Get done with the eyeball with a little Mod Podge around it to hold it in, and make sure you fill that area in too. And then you can go ahead and make sure you have it sewed up good. Maybe use a little bit of this stuff here, fills gaps, gap filler, and get it nice and firm inside so it'll look good on the side that everybody's going to see. And I actually can stick this piece of PVC in through the head and push on that PVC. And when I push on it, your tail should kind of stick up in the air because you want it all the way back in that tail. I started sewing it up right there, but I made sure I had room to work, and then I started putting in all the stuffing. So I'll get back to you on day 6. This is still day 5. I wanted to tell you that once you know everything is going to fit into your fish the way you want it, you still have to drill a couple holes in the PVC. That goes in the head of the fish. That's where my wire goes through. That's where I flattened out my PVC to go in the tail. Now keep in mind that that wire is in there backwards right now. I'm just getting an estimate on how the fish is going to hang. And then I'll stick the wire in from the other side, and it'll stick out on the side that nobody's going to see on this side right here. If that makes any sense. I drilled 2 holes through the PVC. I got the wire coming out here. What I'm going to do is pull that wire out, turn it around, and I'll have it sticking out through the crack where I'm going to sew up the fish at. Well, this is still day 5. I got it sewed up pretty good. It's awful hard to sew up a gar because of that skin. I had to poke holes ahead of time and then come back and sew it up with fishing string. You have to remember, once you sew it up, you got to make sure that skin is straight when you sew it up. And if you ever have to squirt any of that gap filler in there, just squirt a little bit in there because it'll sure fill it up in a hurry. It expands after you put it in there. So you don't know what's going to happen until it starts to dry. That's the back side of it. And this is the front side of it. What you do is you can use a modeling clay, or you can use Page, or you can use a acrylic, like or maybe a Bondo type stuff. We mix 50-50 clay in both pieces, but none of them shrink, so that's the main thing. You get it on there once you're done. And then I cleaned off my eyeball real good with my little paintbrush and a little bit of water and smooth things out. I stuck that in there to keep that gill out just a little bit, so I'll be able to see the gill, because when it dries, it's going to dry just like it is right now. It may take 2 days, it may take 2 weeks. I don't know about a gar, but most of them only take a couple days, like a small bass or something. You got to take these paper clips. I bought these special because they're jumbo clips and they've got little ridges on them. And when they got little ridges on them, they don't slide off as easy. So they're actually called jumbo non-skid. And it's because they have this little rough edge on them. Try to show it to you. See, it's got that little rough edge on it. Anyways, they're non-skid is what they're called. If you go to buy some at an Office Depot or something. I just went ahead and ordered mine online. They were about the same price with free shipping and Amazon. You know how that goes. But if you don't use a non-skid, they're liable to fall off during the night as your fish starts to dry out. And then your fin won't be spread out. It'll be tight, kind of tight to itself. and it won't look near as good. And it's too late to change it once it dries out. You can't change it unless you cut it off with a razor blade and replace it with another one or something like that. So, but anyways, this is day 5, and this is how far I got. I'm about ready to call it a day now. I can let it dry out. I do want to mention that I got a secret weapon. If I don't get absolutely positively every single little piece of meat out of the fish, I set it over here in my shed, and the fire ants here in Georgia will take care of getting the rest of it out of there. You just got to keep an eye on it. And remember, the main thing, no matter what kind of fish you're doing, a bass is usually the easiest, a small bass, to practice on. But no matter what fish you're doing, make sure you take your time. You get tired, throw it in the freezer and come back the next day. I get tired and aggravated every day, but I've got a lot of patience. It takes a lot of patience. Take your time. Get it the way you want it. Let me turn off this light a little bit. It's not so bright. See where I put the clay around the eyeball. I've got the jaw just how I want it, where it's just opening the mouth a little bit. But I'm going to come back in a couple hours and check those paper clips because they'll slip off on you. But remember, just take your time. Do it for a while, put it in the freezer. Doesn't matter if you've already tried to dry it out with borax or if it's wet or whatever. Just keep it wet, stick it in the freezer, keep spraying those fins until you're ready to spread them out and dry them out with paper clips on the cardboard. Another thing about the cardboard is if you take a milk carton, it's got that wax on the outside of it. You take an old milk carton and cut it up, and that wax on the inside of it, I put it on the inside on my paper clips. So when it dries out, the paper will not stick to them and damage your fins when you're trying to dry them out and take them apart. So we'll come back in a couple days, and if it's dried out, we'll take everything off, and then we're going to start painting it. The fish looks nothing like it's going to look after I paint it. It's really weird. You can make the fish look however you want to. You start painting it. Just make sure you're using the right painting kit and a good airbrush. So we'll be back with you in a couple days. Well, my gar's been out here about a week. I got it sitting on the floor of my shed. Remember I was talking about the ants? They got a good trail going in and out of that gar. It's not going to hurt it a bit to get all that extra little teeny pieces of meat or whatever it is they're after inside that fish. Well, I let my gar set about 2 weeks with the little black ants getting all the little specks out of it until just about all the little black ants were gone. When I got this gar, and you'll probably be able to see it better in the beginning videos, but when I got this gar, it was a gray black color with kind of a white bottom. So what I did was you can make a fish look any way you want to. So I decided to make them a dark green, and then I got a little bit of lighter green tapering down to his belly where it's white. And what I did is I started with lighter colors. That way you can cover up any mistakes you make. I got the fins the way I wanted them. Probably a pearl white, and then maybe a clear white. So they're not real white looking and fakey, but they look like fish fins. And on the back side of the gar, back here in his tail where he had all those nice little spots, I took a brush and I touched every one of those little black spots up with a black ink brush. Jet black it's called, the color. And then I went in and behind it and I did pink in between. And you can't hardly see it in this video, but I got pink on the back side of it. Nobody's going to see it, and the pink's going to kind of show through. So I did a pink, and then I did a light green and a dark green far away spray. So it didn't really stand out, but it had that little kind of a green look. And then on top it's got the darker green and gray. Instead of black and gray, he's kind of a green and gray, kind of a light gray down in there. I touched every one of those spots with a little black, jet black ink brush, and all the ones on the tail too. Did pink from the back side, so I didn't have to worry about covering it up, and it would kind of show through just a little bit, because that's the way a gar is when you catch him. He's usually got just a little bit of pink back there. So the very last thing I got to do is put the lacquer on. I got my lacquer sitting there and ready, but I'm going to wait till tomorrow. Make sure all my paint's good and dry. All my spray is good and dry. And he's ready to go. So I do the very last one with the lacquer. Okay, I'm going to make sure I wear this, because if you don't, you could be coughing a year from now. All it takes is just a little bit of that to get in your lungs, and you'll be in trouble. You have to go to the doctor, whatever. But you want to make sure you have a good mask like this. Okay, I'm putting on the lacquer now. I'm going to try to hold the phone with one hand and spray with the other. You can see this piece of driftwood is about 22 inches long. You see I drilled a hole there at the 18-inch mark, and I drilled a hole down here at the 2-inch mark. So that means I got 16-inch centers. When I put it on the wall, it'll line up with the studs in the wall. So that's the reason I did that. I did it ahead of time, and I did it low enough on the driftwood so when I mount the fish up here in these holes, it won't interfere with me getting to the screws and being able to screw it right to the wall. I know I told you about the coat hanger wire that I put in there. I drilled some holes in the CPVC pipe, so they come out of the fish like that. Came out of my gar, and then these line up with these holes here, and I slide it on in, and that holds up my gar until I'm all done painting and everything. And I pull it back out, and then I've drilled these holes down here. That's about 1 3/4 apart for the two holes. So I drilled my holes down here. There's one right there on the end. Probably can't see it in the video, but let me see if I can move this. Okay. There's a hole right there. And there's a hole right there. And they're about 2 3/4 or 1 3/4 inches apart. And remember, if you don't want to use a piece that's 20 inches long so you can get 16-inch studs, you can always drill your holes for on the wall up and down. Put one up at the top, and then one down, straight down lower, and mount it to the wall like that on just one stud. And that way it would actually mount to the edge of your stud. But you get the idea. But anyways, I think I got my gar finished. It's shiny, wet looking. I started out with a dark green. Actually, I started out with a white on the bottom, and then I did my fins with a kind of a clear pearl white, and the belly with pearl white. That way you can paint over any mistakes you make. Remember, I touched up all my little black dots with a paintbrush. And then I went back with a light green and kind of tapered it down to the white. And then a dark green. I got my finished project. Just going to put it on the driftwood and then mount it on the wall. Now all I have to do is, after I stick it through the driftwood, is cut these off and bend them over so the fish won't move, and then mount the driftwood to the wall. Alright, we're coming to the end of this YouTube video. I just want to remind everybody to make the fish any way you want to. Be patient, put it back in the freezer, and come back out and work with it some more. Get it back out. Not only can you make the fish any way you want, but I looked at that piece of driftwood, and I looked at the size of this gar, and I said, I wonder if I got something long enough to mount that gar on it. So I got this 3-foot piece of knotty pine out of my shed, and I said, hey, that might work better than that driftwood. So you got endless possibilities with the fish and how you mount it, what you mount it on, and everything. Use your imagination. I'm no great artist. I have to kind of do things like away from it and let the dust settle a little bit. Let the paint settle on the fish and do a little bit at a time so I don't make mistakes and don't get carried away. So far, so good. So y'all have a good one, and enjoy trying to mount your gar. It's going to look cool when you get done, just like this one.